Multi-exposure mode means that your camera takes several photos and then it blends them all together in a single JPEG image. But how? What's the best way to do that? That is what we are talking about today. Hi everyone, welcome to Tech. Today we are talking about the multi-exposure feature on Fujifilm cameras. And there are 4 important settings. They're called modes: additive, average, light, and dark. So on cameras like the X-T5, for example, make sure your camera is in stills mode. Multi-exposure won't work with video. Go down into the camera icon into your menu. It's at the bottom right here, and turn it on. When you do that, you'll see the 4 modes appear. However, on other cameras like the X-S20, it is not located in your camera's menu. You need to press your drive button and then scroll all the way down to the bottom, right here. So the overall idea of Fujifilm multi-exposure is this. Your camera allows you to take up to 9 separate images, which it will then blend them all together, combine them, and save it to your SD card as a single JPEG. For today's demonstration, I will be using this. Have a look at this. It's all about the gear. The entire composition of this photo was done completely in camera, just right here with these 4 choices. Now, something you should be aware of: the combined image you get, the JPEG that it saves to your SD card, that's the format the camera is going to use. It will not give you a raw file of the combined photo itself. You always want to set your camera to shoot in both JPEG and RAW, because your camera will then save individual RAW files of each of those multiple exposure shots that you took, together with the combined JPEG. If your camera is set to only shoot in JPEG like this, all you're going to get is the single combined multi-exposure JPEG and nothing else. Interestingly though, if you set your camera to just shooting RAW, you'll get the individual shots in RAW format, but you'll also get your combined JPEG. Here's the basic workflow to shoot in multi-exposure. With the setting on, you simply choose one of your modes. I'll choose average. You see how it says 0 out of 9? And you'll also see the multi-exposure menu icon. So with the setting on, you take your first shot and you'll see 3 choices: next, retry, or exit. If you're happy with the shot that you just took, you can now move forward and take your next shot. And you simply press the menu OK button. However, if you don't like the shot at all and you want to redo the most recent shot you're in the middle of taking, you can go ahead and press the joystick to the left if you're on an X-S20, or the left D-pad if you're on an X-T5. And once you do, the camera will clear out the screen and you can take your shot over again. You see how it says 0 out of 9. So what that means is that the camera allows you to take up to 9 shots. So for example, I'll take shot 1, boom, and now you see 1 out of 9, and I'm ready to do the second one. What it does is it takes your current composition, and right now that's just the first shot we took, and it dims it a little bit, right? Makes it a little bit transparent, so that you can line it up with whatever shot you're about to take next. And remember, each shot that you're taking is a completely independent photo. You can set the exposure of each shot separately. As soon as you're done, press the back button. However, you have to have a good understanding of the 4 modes. And that's what we're going to do right after this. A quick word from today's sponsor, HUANUO. When I shoot B-roll, I often have to connect my cameras to an external monitor so I can see exactly what I'm framing. And lately, I have discovered how easy it is to use my monitors with HUANUO's new FlowLift Pro Arm. Just one finger moves it. It tilts, swivels, and rotates, and it uses a mechanical spring, so it stays exactly where I put it, and it won't sag. The yellow ring right here sets the tension. It's so easy to install. Check out the link below to learn more. So the first mode on the list is called additive. This one is definitely the most like how it used to be when shooting film years ago and wanting to do multi-exposure on film in the camera. What you did was you had your film camera, you took your first shot, and then you would wind the film back 1 frame, and then you would shoot your second shot. And it was the additive mode, exactly what Fujifilm has as that first advanced mode. So here's an example of a shot I took yesterday of a common problem that can happen with additive on the Fujifilm camera. This is additive gone wrong. I set the camera to additive mode and I took 3 shots, and then it was combined with multi-exposure. And what you are seeing here is the #1 problem with additive, which is the fact that additive stacks one photo on top of the other. And the problem with that is it keeps increasing the light. And what happens is you wind up blowing out your photo pretty much. That's the problem with additive, and you have to be careful about that. Here I chose additive and I got my exposure looking good for my first shot, and I took it. And I took a second shot. You see that? It's getting brighter. By the time I went and took the 3rd shot, too bright. So there's a simple fix for this, and the tip is lower your exposure on each shot before you stack it. You do not have to have each one of them the same exposure settings. Go down maybe -1 to -1.5 stops of light. So if you're trying out multi-exposure on Fujifilm for the first time and you haven't used it a lot, I would not start with additive. Instead, I would start with the very next one I'm about to tell you, and that is average. So average works very similar to additive. Remember, the photos just stack on each other with the light building up and getting brighter. But the camera steps in at the last minute. It splits the brightness evenly across each frame of your multi-exposure combined JPEG. And so you're getting this free auto help from the camera, but like everything else in life, there is a trade-off. Your subjects, they can appear softer and more translucent. And I've got a very good tip for you for using average to prevent that ghosting I'm talking about, and that is don't shoot more than 2 frames. And certainly don't do all 9, okay? I would keep it at about 2, maybe 3 tops if you're going to use average. Another tip is to keep the subjects in each of your frames not overlapping each other. And you want to combine that with making your main subject brighter and punchier than the secondary subject behind it. And try using classic chrome or acros. We've got 2 more modes to go over, and I think they are the 2 most important. We're now going to switch gears for a little bit because understanding what I'm about to tell you is going to determine whether or not you get mediocre multi-exposure shots or really good ones. With additive and average, what they will do is they will look at the entire photo's brightness when deciding how to merge them together. However, light and dark work the opposite way. What they do is they go pixel by pixel across the entire frame. And as they do that, they will stop at each pixel and they're going to make a determination. So now I want you to imagine that each frame is a grid of tiny squares or pixels, okay? Every single square, when your camera is processing and merging and doing all the work it needs to do to create that JPEG file, your Fujifilm camera looks at each one and it asks one question. Which square is the brightest, okay? Brightest wins. If it's set to dark mode, it will ask which one is the darkest and so forth. And now let's say the camera has gone through these pixels and it currently is looking at this one right here. It looks pretty bright. I don't know. That's a hard one to beat. And then it looks at this frame. Oh, that's not even a close call. So this is the winner. And so that pixel, the one from the brighter one, stays and it gets rid of the darker one. Light mode keeps whatever is brightest at that spot and dark mode keeps whatever is darkest. But the important takeaway here I want you to understand is that nothing between these 2 photos is being blended or merged in any way. It's either using pixels from this one or this one, depending upon what mode you have it set to and which pixel is brighter or darker. So take a look at this shot right here. I set the camera to bright mode and I took 3 shots. Shot 1, shot 2, shot 3. And this is what it looked like when the camera combined it together. So now think about this. If you have one frame with a black background or a really dark background, and you have a bright subject, like the light bulb here, you see that? When the camera is combining them, and you've got a subject that's brighter than the background, it's going to favor the squares, the pixels, and keep those. You see how it's not ghosting, it's not blurry, it is sharp and clear. Even though these are three separate photos, it's not stacking and multiplying the light because we had it set to light. That is what it chose to use, and it tossed out the darker areas. And speaking of dark mode, have a look at this right here. I took two shots in dark mode, this one and this one. Because I was using a zoom lens, for one of the frames I zoomed in, and here's what it looked like when I combined them. And as you can see, because we have a white background, but we're in dark mode, the dark mode tossed away the white pixels behind here and kept the darker pixels when it combined the shots. Here's another example of dark mode, shot number 1, shot number 2, and combined. But PALDATECH, you crazy YouTubing Fujifilm maestro, why is this subject in black and white and this subject in color? And that moves us to another tip I want to share with you. Not only can you zoom in and change exposure between each frame, right, and make them all different, you can also change the film simulation. Light bulb number 1, I think that was pro negative high. Light bulb number 2, I used ASTIA. And finally, light bulb number 3, Acros. And so, using dark mode and combining them, this is what I got. And it's sort of a combination of a few tips, right? Changing exposure a little bit, changing the film simulation, and making sure that I have the right background for the mode that I was using. Should you always do it this way? Of course not. The whole point of multi-exposure is to get wild, get crazy, get creative, tell a story, do something dreamy, right? And it's a tool belt you're wearing with 4 tools, and you got to know which is the right one for the scene that you're shooting. This one was set to dark mode with the wrong background, obviously, and it can be frustrating when you're setting up your shots and you're trying to be creative. There's the 3, and then boom. Whoops. Here's another one where one of the frames was shot in Acros. You see that right there. The other 2, I believe, were in ASTIA. And what happened when they were combined, the Acros sort of bled through. You see that? Another tip is you can get experimental with focus, or actually, more importantly, not being in focus. Remember, you're stacking different images together. And so for some of them, you might want to not have them in focus. Here's frame number 1, frame number 2, and the combination. But I kept it dreamy because you wanted to have a little of that come through, right? I didn't want it to be having the subjects completely isolated from the background with no connection to it at all. And to do the job of a dreamy, kind of blendy background, you would use additive. See how it did that there? You have come a long way since the beginning of today's video, but let's wrap this up, okay? Additive piles and adds it on, especially light. Average splits it evenly. Bright keeps the brightest. Dark keeps the darkest. I recommend shooting in both RAW and JPEG so that you can always have backup copies of your non-merged images. Keep in mind that very important rule, which is the more frames you stack on and blend, the easier it is going to be to overexpose. You can stack up to 9. I wouldn't even go that far. So keep an eye on your histogram. If you don't know what a histogram is, hold off on multi-exposure, learn histogram first. It is actually a lot more important, and then come back to multi-exposure. I will have a link to a very helpful histogram video in the description below. Oh, and by the way, here's a little helpful guide that shows the approximate additive exposure values. Remember, that's the mode where you have to be careful about overexposing. In the next day or so, I will publish a full written guide based on all of the information you just saw in this video. It'll be on PALDATECH.com. You'll find it on the website in the guides section right here. Okay, I did my part. Now it is your turn. I want you to get out there and I want you to have fun with this. Tell a story. And I would love to see what you come up with. So consider tagging them PALDATECH multi-exposure. You know something? There is a little bit of deception inside every good photo. And this feature that we learned about today really leans into that in a very fun way. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is called multi-exposure. Anyhow, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you found the video helpful, or at least entertaining. And if you did, be sure to give it the like and subscribe. I'm going to be signing off now, but have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you in a new video next week. Take care. So think of it this way, with additive, it's light and more light and more... You know what? We're going to give the rest of the props a rest. But you know what? I got the greatest job in the world. I get to connect with you and play with toys and, maybe we learn something.